you've been planning to work on that speech, you really intended to do it, you're all planned out in your head exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to lay out all the details, but somehow got busier than you planned, things came up, and you just didn't get around to it. So now you're about ready to give a speech and you're not quite sure what to say. And yet you promised to do the speech and you don't want to back out of it. But you'll probably end up backing out of it because you have no clue what to say. Or, friend, cousin, buddy, whatever, is having a wedding or some other big event with a lot of people there. And they come up to you and say, you know a lot about this. Why don't you come by, say a few words, a little 5-7 minute thing out there, just kind of talk about the couple, talk about that project you're working on, talk about that book you've been writing. And it's about 10 minutes before you're supposed to go on and talk about that. That happens too. So many times in life we've got a speech to give or something to say and we've had no time to prepare. So that's scary. Unless you know how to create an instant speech. There are a lot of different methods of doing this. One I want to talk about today is called mind mapping. And the great thing about it is it's very simple. It's very easy. All you have to do is to get your mind focused and then open up your mind to all the stuff you already know. Because so often we say the same things. We say, I've got to give a speech or I've got to talk and I don't know what to say. I have no clue what to say out there. And yet the funny thing is, we give speeches all the time. We talk to our friends, we talk to our coworkers, we talk to people we know, we talk to people we don't know. Some of us, you know who you are, can go on for hours talking about stuff. And yet when we call it a speech, we put it in front of an audience, it's a whole different matter. It doesn't need to be if you use mind mapping. Mind mapping is a very simple way to do things in which you focus the mind and get it to stop running around. And it really consists of 3 parts. You write down what you want to think, what you want to write about. Write down what you want to talk about. And whatever that subject is, draw a circle around it. You draw out a couple lines, several lines. You write down the first 3 things that come to your mind about that topic. So in other words, if someone mentioned to you ball, what are the first 3 things that come to mind? Just like that. Write those down. Draw a circle around each of those things. Write out 2 more lines in each one of those circles. And then write out the first 2 things that come to mind when you think of that word. Let's say ball reminds you of red. So ball, you'd write a line out, circle, red. And then you'd have 2 more lines going out. Red reminds you of hot, reminds you of bothered. So that would be it. And don't worry, I know a lot of you are confused right now. We'll talk in much more detail exactly how this works. But the most important thing for you to understand is you're going to take the way you're already thinking and you're simply going to trap it and freeze it. And from there, you're going to get a kind of frozen picture of the way your mind naturally works. So you can't forget things because these are the first 3 things that come to mind. So now, we're going to go ahead and talk about the details of how to do mind mapping. the first thing to do when you're doing mind mapping is to write down your central point. Just write it down, write the thing out, and then to circle it. You want to circle it because circling focuses our attention in. We just write something down, it's okay, but if we circle it, that tells the brain, aha, this is important. So here's what you do. Write down your topic, and my topic is mind mapping. Write it down and then just draw a circle around it, like this. Of course, your copy will be neater than that, but that's the idea. And that's the first step. Because if you're going to open up your mind, you have to know what the heck you're going to talk about. You can't just write down stuff, draw a circle around it, and hope for the best. You have to know what you're talking about. So the first thing mind mapping teaches you to do is to be aware of your subject. What is it you're talking about? Why are you talking about that? And if you do pick a topic and draw a circle around it, hopefully it's something you know a little bit about. Remember, the whole goal here is to take things you already know and create these speeches out of them. If you don't know them, if you don't fully understand them, then all mind mapping will do is show that you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Be very clear to the audience that you don't know what the heck you're talking about. So do the research first. Then you can do the mind mapping. But it's this first step, this step of circling the point, that is key. Because it focuses the mind in and it frees the mind up. Starts you thinking about all different sorts of things that relate to that subject. Very important. Has to relate to the subject. So if you write down something about flowers and you draw a circle around it and you start talking about something completely not related to flowers or not obviously related, you draw a line and you talk about, maybe think about trees or pictures or words. Those are okay, but they won't really help you. Now I've jumped ahead a little bit, so don't be confused. I will explain later on what I talk about drawing lines out of things and circling things and what the things that come to you. That's later steps. But right now we're just talking about focusing the mind on one thing. Because what happens to our mind so often is we jump. We start out here and we end up over there. We start out thinking about, wonder where I put my keys. And we end up thinking something like, wouldn't it be great to live in Florida? And there's a logical step. There's a way that we went from this point to that point to that point. And that's wonderful. That's what the mind does. It draws these connections. When you're talking, when you're speaking, and you want people to understand you, your connections can't get too far out. You have to relate directly back to that topic. So that's the idea of drawing something out, drawing a circle around it. It says to the mind, okay mind, this is all we're thinking about right now. This is it. So whatever thought you got else in your head, forget about them, only focus on this. The great thing about mind mapping is it's very simple. It's very powerful. In just this first step, and just your writing down your subject, deciding on it, and drawing a circle around it, and focusing in on that, already you've taken a huge leap forward in figuring out what your topic is. And once you have that idea about, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about, now the next thing to do is to figure out what you're going to say. And fortunately, that too is very easy. now that we have our main point, we're ready to get our supporting points. All the other things we're going to talk about in addition to our main point. Remember, we just wrote down the point and circled it. Well, now we're going to get the supporting points in the same easy way we got the main point, by using the power of our mind. You see, when we mention anything, our mind instantly thinks of things. It's the way it works. So if I say the color red, instantly, in everybody's mind out there, there's something that pops into your mind. Like that. It might be blood, or flag, or courage, or badge. Whatever it is, that's what comes into your mind. You say the word red. Mind mapping, we're going to tap that. We're going to trap that information right there so that it's available. We'll do that very simply. You remember last time I talked about drawing the 3 lines out. I said I'd explain that. All that means is you draw out 3 lines and then you write down the first thing that comes to your mind on one of those lines. And the second thing that comes to your mind. Then the third thing that comes to your mind. You draw a circle around each one. It's really important to write down what you think of. So when you look at that central point, you're going to start thinking of things. Write those 3 things down. Just 3. First 3 that comes into your head. First 3 at the first line, second one at the second line, first, second, third. So our mind map will now look like this. You notice that there's a central point of mind mapping, and then different points. Draw, remember, flow. Each one with a line coming out from them, and then each point is circled. Now we're starting to get into something. We're starting to build up our speech. Starting to build in more things into it. Or we started with just that central point. Now we have 3 supporting points. And it's very, very important in doing mind mapping to let the mind work. It's so tempting to censor things, to say, that's stupid, I don't want to write that down. No, that's a dumb thought. That's not what I want to say. That makes no sense. Very easy to do that when we start to have things that come up in our mind. Problem is, whether or not it makes any sense right now, it is the first thing that comes in your mind. Pushing it aside and taking the 5th or 6th or 7th thing is just going to create a problem. So do the speech, that first thing is going to pop right back up there. And you're going to find yourself talking about that if you're not careful. So it's best to go with first things first. First thought, best thought, as it has been said. Remember that. So first thing that comes to your mind, that's what you write down. And let it flow. And if you don't think you have anything in your mind, here's what you can do. Draw the 3 lines out, and then draw circles at each of those 3 lines with nothing inside them. This will drive your mind crazy. You'll feel the need to fill those circles. Your mind has to fill them. And you will find yourself thinking of all sorts of things. You take the first one, the second one, and the third one, and fill those circles. Again, this is where we are with our mind mapping. Started with our central point. We've now branched out to 3 supporting points based on the first, second, and third idea comes into our head. We're now ready to finish out our speech and get those final supporting points to make our speech whole and entire and complete. And the final step where we get all of those for all the thoughts and ideas we've been having. Created with mind mapping. And it started with the central idea of mind mapping. And then the first three ideas that popped into my head. And they were draw, remember, flow. Those were the important three ideas. So I wrote those down in that second step, with the lines going out. Draw, remember, flow. And then it's all about what are those supporting ideas. By the way through this presentation, now you're going to see how they came to be. Drawing, the importance of drawing, focusing in, getting those points. Remembering, so easy to remember. Ideas just are right there. It follows the way your brain works. Flow, you have to go with the flow, not stop the flow. There's a natural flow the way that things work. Talking about all this stuff throughout this presentation. And here, to show you where it all came from. Third step, getting those supporting points for those ideas. So our diagram now looks like this. Notice all the things we talked about are there. The different points. The idea that you want to draw the first thing that comes into your head. The way you can remember things. How flow works. Going with the flow. Very important. And it is very important. You have to go with the flow of things. Maybe I haven't talked about that enough, so I'll do that now. You have to go with that flow. Your brain works by connecting things together. If you censor, if you say, no, not that, it's not going to work. I want to go this way. Mind mapping won't work for you. Because you'll be fighting the way your brain naturally takes things. When you come up to give that speech, your brain will want to go one way, and you'll try to force it in a different way, and there are going to be problems up on that stage. So go with the flow. Take things by the smooth path. So often we try to make things more difficult than they need to be. It happens. We think, oh, that idea is stupid. I want to use this more complex, interesting idea over here. But actually, it's the stupid idea. It's the best idea. First thought, best thought. One of the most important things to remember in mind mapping is first thought, best thought. You're up there mind mapping, you're writing things down, just let it go. Let it go. And remember, an entire presentation can come out of this. It's not a big deal to give a 25-minute presentation. It's not a big deal to give a 5-minute or a 10-minute or a 15-minute or even an hour presentation if you go with that flow. You've got a sense of how long things are going, how long you want things to go, and you let your mind make those connections instead of trying to force everything all in one particular area. There are times when you want to write down every single word you're going to write. Every single word you're going to go up there and talk, you're going to write all that down. If you're giving a very short speech and you want it to be perfect, write it all down. But if you're giving a long discussion, you don't want to write an essay, you aren't speaking to an academic community, then go with the flow. Let your ideas come up as they come up and map them out. You'll end up with something looking like this. Those are the 3 steps of mind mapping. It begins with getting your point, focusing in on that point. That's the whole thing. when you write down what your main point is and draw that circle around it, your whole mind focuses in. Very important. It's that act. You draw, you focus in, and then as you start to open up, as you start to expand, you draw those lines out, and your mind starts thinking of other things besides that point. What connects in with that point? One thing we talked about, the great thing about mind mapping, is it helps to remember. We have all these ideas around in our head all the time. Mind mapping just helps us remember because we're just simply trapping those ideas and putting them out in the order that they come in. So it's really, really easy to remember our speech because this is the way we think anyway. It's already there. There's no extra work to do. Remembering speeches for many people is difficult. You got to sit down and memorize and go over and over and over it and close your eyes and say, okay, yeah, now I got it. No, I missed a word. Okay, try it again. Now. You practice and practice. Mind mapping, forget about all that. You will remember it. No problem. Because it goes with the way you think. The ideas are there. Remembering happens. It's all about the flow. It's all about getting that flow. Taking things by the smooth side. By the easy side. So often when we do speeches, we do them the difficult way. We think, I've got all this stuff I got to talk about, and I got to cram it into my head somehow, and then spit it out later. Well, that just makes things difficult and tough. Now, if you have to do a speech that way, that's okay. But if you want to do an interesting, exciting, entertaining speech, mind mapping helps you tap into all that stuff that's already there. And just go with the flow. There's this natural flow that goes on. You'll remember everything if you just go with that flow. That's what mind mapping is all about. And in case you didn't notice, those things I talked about there, that was exactly what was on the mind map put up earlier. All those points. They come out just like that. And it happens just like that because it's already there. It's already in our head. And now you know how to write it down. It all begins with circling that central point, drawing the lines out, making the new connections, and then just continue to make connections. Now, so far, we've only done it 3 levels. Central level, bigger, bigger. But you could do it even deeper if you want. You just keep going and growing and growing. How big you get, how detailed you get is up to you. But in all those details, you're still going to be opening up to what you already know. What's already in your head. What you already want to say. Mind mapping is great because it shows us the power of our mind. How simple it is to just tap into it. Just a little bit. And get a speech. Maybe you don't have to do a formal speech. Maybe just somebody asked you to give your opinion about something. Maybe just been asked at the last moment to stand up and give a few words at a bridal shower. Or at a wedding. With mind mapping, you're always ready. Just draw a little diagram out. Boom. You're ready to speak. Gets all your ideas in order. Gets all your ideas flowing. And that's mind mapping. It helps open up your mind and reveal the speech within.